Facebook removes us. Okay. Hey, welcome everyone. My name is Amy Souza. You are watching the Known Heretic channel. I am here with Jennifer and Jeannette of Partners for Ethical Care, whose mission is to. Oh, shoot. I'm hearing myself.
Yeah.
Okay, got it.
hearing you.
I had my YouTube going, so I'm gonna say that again. I'm here with Jennifer and Jeannette of Partners for Ethical Care, whose mission is to raise awareness and support efforts to stop the unethical treatment of children by schools, hospitals, mental and medical health care providers under the duplicitous banner of gender identity affirmation. And their belief is that no child is born in the wrong body. I could not agree more with that statement.
Because that's impossible. You're born in a body.
We all have a body, and you get one. That's the one you get. So
It's
someone
all a system that works together. There is no
It's
one.
the right one. Trust me.
Yeah.
someone was the other day, a woman who does have a child who is in the process of transitioning I was trying to have a conversation with her about you just have one body, like that's the one you have for your whole life. And she was like, it sounds like you're saying you get what you get and you don't get upset. And I was like, yeah,
Kind of like that. Yeah. You come to terms with the things that you can control and the things that you cannot control. That sounds a lot like the entire field of psychotherapy.
Yeah.
But who am I?
Yeah.
Just a mom.
Just a mom. Just a mom.
Well, I'm just a mom too.
That's what I want to get into today, because I know that you two are some very powerful mothers, and that is one of the values that you hold really clearly, is the power of mothers. And I think both of you really show that in your work, in your activism, in the protests that you go to, in the testimony that you give for state legislatures, for speaking out at school boards, and of course, not least of all, running Partners for Ethical Care, which is a vast parent support network. So thank you for that. And I don't know if one of you kind of wants to start on that issue, like, why are mothers even important?
Well, we all come from one, so that's pretty important.
Right. We all have one. And if you're confused about what a woman is, like we say in our protest, ask your mother.
Yeah. She's not confused.
She's not
confused.
Yeah.
And I think the idea of the power of mothers is based on our instincts, which are very like our strongest instinct as a mother is to protect our child and to take care of our child and to raise our child. And those are very powerful instincts, and that we are usually most likely the best people to do that for our own children. And that there are many other mothers out there, so many. I always like to encourage fathers to join our fight, and there are some really great dads out there that are with us. Mine include, my husband included, but there are so many moms, and what they are doing and what they have done is amazing and powerful.
Yeah.
I want to talk about this idea of protection. We say protect children, but protect children not because we own them, because that's not what we're talking about. What we're talking about is mothers recognize vulnerabilities in all kinds of ways. So women in general recognize vulnerabilities in other people, and we want to care for them, right? We want to protect in a way that exudes duty, not control. So when we talk about protecting children, we want to, like, my mom used to have this this Post-it notepad. It said, like, a mom should be like a quilt. It provides warmth, but it doesn't smother a child. So I think that's a lot of the way that I grew up. It gave me an opportunity for growth and movement and all of those things. with enough kind of boundaries and bounds that I could expand all the way to kind of the fence line. And that was an ever expanding fence line, but it's not as if at 5 years old, I got the 18-year-old fence line, right? Because developmentally, it's one thing. I wrote this in one of my stories, is it's not liberating to give 1,000 choices for dinner to a 5-year-old. That's not liberation. That's overwhelming, because the child cannot handle those choices. So when we're giving children the choice, do you feel like a girl or a boy?
Yeah.
That is not a choice, number one. But to even create the idea that there is some choice, and to create it in preschool or at any point to a child, that's not liberating. That's not protecting a child. That's not setting them up for a future in which they can make good decisions. So I think protection, of course, is like an evolutionary thing. We want to protect them because we are generally close to children physically. We have been close to them since they were inside our bodies, and then they're outside. We are well aware of the vulnerability of children and others. And so the protection is natural and evolutionary.
Yeah. That reminds me, I know this child who unfortunately when we were in New York. Oh, Gender Mapper's here, by the way, just saying hi to you.
Hey.
Yeah. Hey, Alex.
Hey,
Alex.
Oh, Alex.
But the father got pretty brutally mugged in New York, and was really messed up and beat up. And the parents took that opportunity to basically start telling the kids, like, well, do you feel like going to soccer, or do you feel like going home, staying home? Like, do you feel like going to school today? If you don't feel like going to school today, you don't have to go to school today. Like, do you want ice cream tonight? Do you feel like having ice cream? And I was in this nannying group, and a friend of mine was we were there. She was watching the kid, and she was reading that Dr. Seuss book, like, Oh, the Places You'll Go, and she was like, you'll go here, you'll go there, you can choose this, you can choose that, you can choose anything that you want, the great Dr. Seuss book.
Except for soccer practice, too dangerous.
Well, except the kid, was 5, and he started to cry when she was reading that book. And he was like, no, the mommy and the daddy will decide. Because he was in a confusing, unstable situation with this dad who had just been, mugged. And instead of the parents saying, nope, everything is routine, you are safe, here are the structures. Right. We go to soccer practice like we always do. We go to school like we always do. Bedtime is the same time as always. They were like, you can decide. So he was confused. And instead of giving him more structure, they were saying, you have the total authority to make all choices. And he, it was such a illustrative example to me. It was so clear when my friend shared this story with me, like, this kid needs a container, and instead of and a tighter container, even in this scenario. Instead of having
to have predictability. I mean, what you're talking about is predictability. So what happened is something happened to the parent, and then they're taking that and they're making it a rule for everything, versus containing that within this particular circumstance. And they're saying it was unsafe in this moment at this time. We tried to do everything to prevent it, but accidents happen, things happen, but that doesn't make it a blanket rule. Now we're not allowed to go outside. I was in New York City on 9/11.
Yeah.
And when that happened, it became that. It became like, should I go to the laundromat? Should I leave my apartment? And then after a while, what they kept saying to us, which is true, you need to live your life, right? You need to continue to live your life, and patterns are soothing, and go back to these patterns, of course. And it is about predictability. Children need consistency and predictability.
Go on.
And they can't make those kinds of choices either. They're not equipped. They are just not mentally equipped to make these decisions. And like, when some of the teachers are laying out, all the different sort of identities they could be, or wherever they're hearing it from, but it's coming from teachers too, some of them. That's another thing that children aren't equipped to make those sorts of decisions on, or to have all those options, right? Like
it shouldn't even be. Why are they even talking about what gender identity? Why don't we talk about like what career choice sounds appealing in third grade? I mean, because you can really have some serious, exciting visioning about what you want to be. Like, I want to be a zebra trainer, for example. That's a cool thing to start with in third grade. Like, that's fun. And then maybe by fifth grade, you realize, actually, we can't domesticate zebras. That ship has sailed. It's not possible. But maybe I could go into horse training, and I'm going to start riding lessons in sixth grade, right? I mean, they're real things that you can have actual visioning about that are truly possible, not changing sex.
Well, and I always thought too, like, again, like even these like career conversations are kind of external, like, why not have a conversation like what kind of values do you want to have? Like, do you want to be a kind person? Do you want to be a funny person that makes people laugh? Do you want to be a strong person? Like what do you want to internally develop? Because ultimately those are going to be the hardest things to claim. It's not that hard in a sense to learn a profession. It's a lot harder to learn integrity. It's a lot harder to learn boundaries.
I think there are good ways to do that, though. I remember, I mean, I've had lots of conversations with myself. Of course, some of them actually in audio. I could record those, just me talking to myself, but most of them are inside my head. So actually listing out, like, these are things that I want to work on. Like, these are actually qualities that I want to have. And then when I do something, I go, does that really, am I really exuding the quality that I want to be?
Yeah.
Because I see it in somebody else. Like, let's say I see it in somebody else and I say, I admire that person. And that's what they try to do. I think for kids in schools, they say, pick somebody you admire. And then you look at that person, you go, why do you admire that person? This is a typical assignment in schools. Why do you admire that person? And then you have these qualities. And like you're saying, you say, these are the values that I want to have. And then you check yourself when there are moments where you have to make a decision. You go, well, I want to be an honest person, or I want to be a person who is loving, like, and warm, which I'm always in a constant state of working on warmness. Warmness. Some people are much warmer. You're a warmer person, Amy. Jennifer's a nice warm person. I didn't grow up in like a warm household, so it's something I'm growing a bit, which is why I spend a lot of time outside in the summer trying to just get warmer. But those qualities, then you can say, I want to be these, and my behavior should reflect these. So you're constantly kind of checking that. But I agree with you. Once you have your values set, you can basically do anything.
Yeah, I think so.
Unless be a zebra trainer, that's not possible. It's like changing sex. You can't change sex.
Still be a zebra trainer. It's still in my future.
No, I feel like you could be a zebra trainer, but you can't change sex. No.
I don't know about that.
Yeah. Well, and so obviously you both have so many different experiences. You have your own personal experiences with kids. Both of you have daughters who have gone through a transition process and claimed that they are not their own sex. Not a girl. And you've also worked with so many parents. Like, what are the, I would want to ask, I would love for you, if either of you want to share your personal stories, but also I kind of globally want to ask, what are the patterns that you're seeing? Are you seeing a pattern of parenting that is going off? Are you seeing more of, like, obviously, I'm under the belief that kids are being groomed by their teachers.
No, that's totally not happening, Amy. That's a conspiracy theory.
But I don't want to say it. I want you to say it.
That's a conspiracy theory made up by libs of TikTok that does video after video of actors, of course. These are not real people in the classroom doing the actual grooming. Those
Yeah.
are thousands and thousands of actors, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Right.
The libs of TikTok videos are
The best.
horrifying. And
They're horrifying, but how
Yep.
great that we have an insight.
Oh, I love libs of TikTok. It's excellent. I mean, it's like just blowing all that stuff wide open, and there's so many of them.
Yeah.
Actually, also Colin Wright and Buttons. What's her name? His girlfriend. Anyway,
Christina
Buttons. They've been blowing some stuff open too. They, they did that video of was it like a teacher conference or teacher training or whatever, talking about how they definitely are, of course they're going to keep secrets from, unsupportive parents about their child's transition. That was, it was actually something we all know is happening, but I was so thankful to them for getting it, capturing it on video. I mean, there is the evidence right there.
Yeah.
That they are clearly grooming our children and keeping secrets, which is part of grooming. Keeping secrets from parents is part of grooming children.
Somebody said the other day, I mean, we know that the thing that equals the greatest success for children is parents. I mean, academic success, whatever you want to call that, is parents who are involved with their children. And that's why we have, for example, like my PhD research is in homeschooling. So some people say, oh, homeschooling's better outcomes. And I go, actually, the thing that makes homeschooling better is involved parents.
Yeah.
You have to have involved parents in order to have homeschooling. So of course you have better outcomes. Doesn't have something to do with homeschooling, has to do with the involved parents. So why would you not want to involve parents in their children's lives? Because you're going to get better outcomes in all facets of life if you have involved parents. That's we know that. So I'm not sure why it would seem that we want to separate that. And again, I keep going back to like evolution. In order for us to thrive as a species and as societies, we had to work together. Even with the crappy neighbor on the pioneer farm, you can't live without Bob. He's a jerk, but he does have cows and you do need milk. So you need to like work together with all your different personalities and all your different quirks and all these different people that you might not like in order to literally survive. And I'm not sure why we have forgotten that and thought that we can just live as individuals in society. I don't think we're helping our kids to separate and segregate them into these things where you permanently cut off, or you say that person is bad and these people are good. That is so dehumanizing. The idea that you throw away, the idea that you discard an entire human being as somehow bad is completely dehumanizing. I am not sure how you can spout off kind of this, trans rhetoric and say, oh my God, you're dehumanizing me. You should go away. I'm like, you just dehumanized me. Like that is the entire thing. That's the whole thing. I'm a whole human being and you disagree with this part of me, but maybe we're both vegetarian. Maybe we could get along on that. But because you have this problem and we disagree on this small thing, then all of a sudden I'm a worthless person and I'm in the trash. That's not the way we can survive as a society.
No.
Yeah, I mean, that's a thing that's happened with all kinds of things. If we're on the political divide, if we're on the other side of whatever somebody else thinks, then everything that we believe is, bad, and we're bad people because we're on the wrong side. I mean, that's definitely black and white thinking and simplifying everything, and we're all much more complex than that. And yes, we can agree, we can disagree, on something and agree on many other things. And actually that was one of the big lessons that I learned, because I live in, in this sort of liberal bubble, which I used to think was really great. And I don't feel that way anymore. But yeah, I thought that people from the other parts of the country, that there were people that were intolerant and bigoted more, and because I have been put in this situation, where I have now you're
the intolerant bigot, and you're like, hold on though, Like, wait, I used to think intolerant bigots were different people than I am, and now
Yeah.
I'm being called an
Yes.
intolerant bigot.
And I was being the
Hold on
intolerant
a
bigot.
minute.
Exactly. No, absolutely. I mean, I've learned that lesson. Like, really, what I believe now is that most of the people across the US, we're all way more alike than we are different.
Yeah.
We all love our children. Most people have their children's best interests at heart.
Yeah. They're capable of doing that in this moment in their life. Yes, most people are.
Yeah. And that religious people are not anti-gay necessarily. I mean, that's a big misconception.
Such a myth.
Yeah, and not racist either. You know, I mean, it's like all these horrible ideas that people have about people on the right are totally wrong.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. I mean, that is something that I mean, as Partners for Ethical Care, we say that we will take a seat at any table and we'll partner with anybody just on this issue. So unlike some organizations that we just came from Ohio, I did testimony in Ohio on behalf of Partners for Ethical Care, and we worked alongside the Center for Christian Virtue.
Yeah.
Scary for me as an atheist. But I'm like, I'm going to be open to everything. And I'm from Ohio, so we do have that in common. The people, you know, the Center for Christian Virtue people, we're Ohioans. So, okay, fine. We have that. But it's amazing how I said, you know, we're going to work on this issue together, this particular piece of legislation, these testimonies, getting this stuff together. And it's very likely that there will be 10 other issues that I will be on the other side of sometime in the future with the same people from that organization, right? We will be on opposite sides at some point, probably. And the idea is that that person is a human being and that we can play fair. You know what I'm saying? That we can actually do what is democracy, which is a little bit messy and all human. We treat other people like human beings because it's the issue that we're trying to explain to people, raise awareness on, and then have people make decisions about. And that doesn't involve anything about personal attacks, right? It's so easy to say, oh, that person is X, and so that entire human being is gone. But if you work with somebody for a while and you get to know a little bit about like them as a human being, like, oh my gosh, they work better at night because they're sending emails at 2-3 o'clock in the morning, or this is an early bird person. They wrote to me at 6 a.m. and they expect me to respond, right? You learn a little bit about their humanity and that makes them a real person. And then when you work with them kind of on the opposite side, you can't really be super mean to a person who you know a little bit about. You know, it's just not possible. They say, I remember listening to this whole thing about people become better looking when you know them more. Like objectively speaking, if you just look at pictures of people, then you say, oh my God, you know, he's really nice looking or she's really nice looking. And then maybe you get to know some of those people and then you look at the pictures again and the people that you get along with better and you know better become better looking.
Yeah.
Similar to the way if you get to know a person, you treat them in a nicer way usually, you know, because you can see them as a full human being. Not just, you know, they think this about this issue.
Yeah,
for sure. So I want to go on, Jennifer.
Well, I don't know where you were going to go, Amy, but I want to make sure that we talk
There's
about.
There's two of us, Jennifer. We can outnumber her.
I want to, okay, good. That's where I want to go, Jennifer. So I want to do a little juxtaposition. So I want to show this clip of this teacher who, I want to talk about a couple things, but I'm going to sort of map out what I want to do here. I want to talk about, a little bit about secret keeping, but also about, this sort of love bombing flood of characterization. And I want to juxtapose two clips because I want to bring in this clip of a teacher who's basically telling kids they can change in his classroom, and that they're superheroes, you know, if they claim one of these gender identities, and kind of what that does to kids' brains when that happens. And then I want to share that clip of you, Jeanette, talking about, you know, what this affirmation is doing. So I'm gonna show us these. So I'm gonna add this.
Is that when I compared children to dogs? I think I probably got director on that.
Goes a lot further than that because.
Can you hear him?
Yeah.
Oh, that was really fast. I'm gonna play him again.
is for our students to be able to wear the clothes that their parents approve of, come to school, and then swap out into the clothes that fit who they truly are. And I use the idea that this is like Superman changing in a phone booth. But that idea actually goes a lot further than that, because
Yeah. So he's basically, I don't know if you could hear him very well. I don't know. I maybe my volume when I captured him wasn't great, but he's saying that he lets kids come to his classroom. He has a changing booth. So first of all, that's creepy to me that kids are taking off their clothes and changing in his classroom. But second of all, he's saying, he tells them, you're like Superman. You're like a friggin', superhero in a comic book, and ultimately, like, what are the other kids supposed to get from that? Like, what
And he
are
doesn't
they?
realize when he says that how much he's leading them into to doing it. Oh, I want to be Superman.
Right.
Yeah, let me go into that. I'm going to change myself up into somebody else. Another sex. Yeah.
So I want to add. I want to add.
It was interesting. The beginning part of that, though, he said kids come to school in clothing that their parents approve of. Okay.
Yeah,
There's a couple things there. I remember as a young person trying to get away with wearing stuff to school, mostly layers of awesome clothing, which was mostly around the fuchsia in range, because it wasn't girly. It was like badass Joan Jett in the Black Hearts kind of stuff, right?
Yep, obviously.
Did your mom like that?
Well, I wanted to wear multiple layers because I wanted to be like 300% cool. And my mom was like, no, because laundry, I'm not like, come on, man. And I was like, no. So I would pack it in my bag. Right? So then when you get to school, you go into the bathroom and you add the layers. I got layers of clothing so I can have all the cool clothing on at one time.
Yeah.
And it was still within the dress code, still cool. And then, of course, at the end of the day, I take that off. I shove it in my bag. All right.
Yeah.
My parents approved of that clothing. Sure. They also purchased it. And that's the authority of a parent.
Yeah.
I mean, the parent gets to decide what is acceptable, because we miss the part where the child actually leaves school and goes home into their life.
Yeah.
Where they see their mom, their dad, their grandparents, the rest of their friends after school. They go to the grocery store, they have weekends, and that's their clothing for their life, because school is not life. School has never had anything to do with life. It has always been an institution that is about schooling. It's not about living. It has never been about that. It has never prepared people for living. It is its own institution.
Yeah.
Forgive me, I'm anti-schooling over here.
Well, you're like
trying to become that way too.
Well, so I want to give this. I'm going to push pause. So this is Jeanette. This is you.
This is me.
You can't tell. And you are responding here to a question about affirmation. So I think it really kind of speaks to this question of this teacher and what is happening. So I'm gonna let you answer, and then we'll go back to you. Let's see. Maybe you'll still agree. Maybe you'll disagree.
Maybe not. Let's see.
Forever. It is called positive reinforcement. Everybody who took Psychology 101 would know what that is. By giving a dog a treat, they continue to do the same thing over and over. If I say that I love your green jacket, you will probably wear it more often. And if I keep using your pronouns and smiling at you, I'm sure that you will be very happy. That's affirmation. That's also dog training and positive reinforcement. If you reward it, it increases the behavior. That's basic.
Yeah. If you reward it, it increases the behavior.
Yeah.
That's basic.
That is basic.
Yeah, true for dogs and people.
It's true for any
animal,
creature. Yeah. It doesn't even have to be a sentient kind of feeling being. I mean, and I'm not saying like we're sentient, sub feeling, cognitive, but we are still at our core driven by this, like somebody said in the chat, this dopamine, this chemical response, right? Of course we are. We are not above that. To think that we are somehow above that and that we are making decisions outside of the concept of like behavioral economics, that we can rise above and think beyond our own physical self and act in other ways, that's denying our own human species.
Yeah, and even as adults, we are not above that. But
Right.
we can understand that that's happening, right? Like we can be like, oh, I might have been susceptible to this flattery or whatever, right? But children do not understand that. They are
No.
not capable yet. Their brains are not finished.
Mhm.
They are very, I mean, we all know that children are easy to manipulate. They are easy to market to. I mean, I just
Right.
remember my son when he was little, every time an infomercial came on when he was watching cartoons, he would be like, Mom, you really have to buy this thing. Every time.
My parents have a funny story of me when I was little asking for batteries for Christmas because the friggin' Duracell bunny was so compelling to me.
Yes. No,
And
that
I
was the
was like,
Energizer bunny.
the
Get your
Energizer
marketing correct.
Yeah, get my marketing, whatever. But I was like, batteries. I want batteries. Like,
Wow. Yeah, because the
um,
bunny.
yeah.
Yeah.
But Jennifer, I want you to go back to we kind
Mm.
of talked about this earlier, and this ultimately goes into this teacher, it goes into what Jeanette was saying in her testimony. But I know your daughter's experience was ultimately, one from going through some awkwardness to being ultimately love bombed. And I kind of want you to go a little bit into that, but also where it led her, because it led into that situation where ultimately you were talking. I don't want to tell your story, but I'm just reminding you to go there, where that she was ultimately put in a position by a teacher who had love bombed her, and she was ultimately not able to speak to her own actual desires in that camp situation, because she had already gotten so much positive reinforcement for this identity that she wasn't able to backtrack on it. But you tell that story.
Okay, so I'll tell it not from necessarily from the beginning, but then from what happened at school. Because what happened was my daughter she was online, she got these ideas there, and which is also something we have since discussed. I mean, that's corroborated by her. Because she's now older and she's desisted, and she looks back on that experience, and she sort of looks back on herself just 2 years later as if, I was a little kid then and I didn't know what I was doing, which she didn't, and she's still a kid. But she, at the beginning of the school year, came out to the school identifying as transgender. And they never said anything to us about that. But yes, she did we knew she was like playing with all these different identities. Ran the gauntlet. But we didn't know she had ended up there. And yes, she did. She got a lot of attention, I think, from the teacher, from classmates. She got attention for it. And she got to go to the bathroom in the office. She got to do
How exciting.
Yeah.
It is exciting. Those are like super exciting things. Yeah.
Well, she was special, right? And different. And she got some extra attention, which, I think she probably needed from us, her parents. But she was getting it there. And so what happened was, she, just to make it as brief as I can, it's such a long story, but she used the words cutting and suicide, and that, which she also learned online from friends online. And she got the attention then of the special therapist. So that was another special thing. And she was being affirmed by that therapist without our knowledge from the first day that she met her. and at some point later in the year, she saw this therapist for a half hour once a week for 2.5 months. And then I got a call from this therapist saying that our daughter wanted to be in the boys' cabin, except for, okay, the call from the therapist, she was using male pronouns. So our son, actually, she was using he, him, and the made up name, and saying that our daughter wanted to be in the boys' cabin at camp, and that he had to officially transition with the school in order to be able to do that. But because the therapist didn't even say this at the time, made sure that we knew, because the principal told her to make sure that we knew that our daughter couldn't officially transition without our permission. And
Oh,
so,
great.
thank God.
Yeah.
You know, like at 13, we never would have known. They would have just done the whole thing, and we would have been none the wiser, because that's the policy in our state, in our district.
Oh my God.
What does transition officially mean
in our district?
What does transition officially mean when
I don't even know, honestly. I still don't even. I mean, you sign a paper saying something, I guess.
Hi, Joyce. Even though you didn't say hi to me, you said hi to Amy. That's fine. I don't take it personally. I have enough resilience that I can do it.
We went through our PhD program together. I'm going to have Joyce on at some point, because she's a cult expert. She's an expert on
awesome.
on cults and how they work, and has exited a cult herself. So
awesome.
We'll eventually talk about that. But anyway, keep going. I didn't mean to interrupt you.
Yeah, no, that's okay. So the therapist called me and told me that our daughter wanted to be in the boys' cabin, and so I've actually had, which we did not allow, and that was when we pulled her out of school, right before the pandemic. But anyway, I've had conversations with our daughter since then, and found out that it was actually the teacher who asked her if she wanted to be in the boys' cabin. And she says, I didn't want to be it was, first of all, she's like, it wasn't my idea. It was the school. She's like, I didn't want to be in the boys' cabin. I wanted to be with my friends, the girls. And I was like, well, you know, did you not feel comfortable answering that question? And she's like, I don't know. I was like, well, you know, you already said you were a boy. She's like, yeah. She's like, yeah, no, I don't think I felt like I had to say.
This is, you know, what's
I would
so
go in the boys' cabin. So it wasn't even her idea. And she didn't even want to do it. And this teacher thinks he was being helpful, but he doesn't have any idea what he just pushed her into a corner, because
that love bombing. All that love bombing put her in a bind. Like, she was like, on the one hand, I want this attention that you're giving me that I love, but on the other hand, like,
I think she didn't even want to go to the camp after that. She was like, I remember that. She's like, I don't even want to go. I'm like, I'm fine with that.
I think it comes down to something that is actually quite basic. The word yes has a positive connotation. The word no has a negative connotation. So what should have happened? What happened is, do you want to be in the boys' cabin? If I say yes, it's positive. If I say no, it's negative.
Well, if she says no, what does that mean? She already said she was a boy.
Yeah, but if we just back up and then we say, hey, child, do you want to be in the girls' cabin or the boys' cabin? Those are both neutral. And so the child actually has a neutral space in order to make a choice. It's the same thing that you do with a toddler or a dog or some other person in a state of difficulty making a choice that is complicated, because she's identifying as a boy, right? But she should still have this choice, because it's
a question female. He never should have asked.
He shouldn't have been asked that. But if we were going
11. To, you can't ask an 11-year-old that.
Correct. I'm correct. But let's just say that we cannot eliminate the terrible, teachers who are putting inappropriate questions. Let's say we wanted to reform the system versus burn it to the ground. So I'm on the burn it to the ground side.
But why can't we eliminate the teachers who ask those questions?
I'm just saying they shouldn't be giving the choice. I think the person who's commenting, right, it shouldn't be given the choice. But if we were going to reform the system, then it wouldn't be, do you want to be in the boys' cabin? What it would be is this or this, this or this. Because in none of those cases do you have to say yes, positive, or no, negative, right? Because the teacher is in, like we talked about, the teacher's in a position of authority. Saying no to an adult is complicated. My daughter used to say, if somebody would say, hey, do you want to come over later? Like maybe we could play this game or da 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 da. And my daughter would think, no, I don't want to. But you know what she would say? She would say, I don't know. And I always joked with her at home because I would say, oh, I heard you answer, that person's question. What you're really saying and what I hear you saying is, I don't know. That's what she's saying when she says, I don't know. She's really saying no, but she's trying to soften it. And I could tell, and that was her go-to. Her go-to was, I don't know. And what she really wanted to say was no, but no is a very forceful word, especially to an adult.
Yeah.
Yes, that's a hard thing to say.
Very hard.
But beyond that, it's just not a question that they should be asking children, period.
No, I agree with you.
There shouldn't be that choice, period. And if he was going to talk to anybody about it, it should have been me.
Oh, because your daughter's 11. She can choose who she wants to sleep with. Come on, Jennifer, you're being so conservative.
I know, right? No, I mean, she obviously can talk to me about these things more than she can her male, by the way, teacher.
That's so creepy.
Yeah.
Well, I want to be the supervisor in that cabin, because that's really creepy.
Well, yeah, right? I don't know.
Super creepy.
Yeah, it would have been a male teacher.
Sorry, Amy, we've taken over. Keep going.
Why you're just talking on my show. Why are you talking? No, of course. But I wanted to also kind of bring this into, because I'm seeing the parallels here, because I happen to know both of your stories. And so this one love bombing, because basically, Jeanette, I heard you tell a story about, and I'll try not to tell it, but I'll let you tell it, but about your daughter wanting these awards, and you did unschool her. She was accelerated, she was very special, but all of the other kids were winning the awards at the school. And when did she win an award? But I'll let you tell that, because I think it's a similar thing where she wanted to be special. She figured it out, based on what was happening in front of her.
Yeah. So when my daughter started school in 6th grade, school is a system. And so I had prepped her the previous year to say, school is a system. This isn't a la carte, like homeschooling is kind of a la carte, at least in my view. And so it was a co-created environment of homeschooling. And I said, school's not like that. You get the whole package and that's what you get. So she was prepared for that scenario. But I'm not saying this because I think every mom would say that their child is exceptional in many ways, and their child is also normal in many ways. But my child was both of those things, but truly exceptional. And I think a lot of our kids who are trans-identified are truly exceptional, as in academically quite advanced, intellectually quite advanced. Even around emotional, they're quite ahead. Yeah. But the social, they're missing. It's really missing. They can perceive lots of feelings, but the social maybe is lacking. So when my daughter started school, she was all excited about it. She was kind of living the values that the school wanted to instill in people going to the school. So they wanted to have, honesty and courage and all these other things were ideals that the school had. And she already had those. She was already like that. She was quite mature, as they say, emotionally and academically for her age. So I remember going to the awards ceremony in 6th grade because I thought and she thought maybe she'll get an award. So I go there and we're there and we watch and all the awards come and go. And she was new at the school. And so, we were friends with her French teacher, and he said, maybe next year. Yeah. I mean, she's new at the school. It makes sense. And it wasn't just like 8th graders getting awards. It was all students getting awards, a lot of 8th graders, but for sure there were 6th graders, 5th graders, 7th. I mean, lots of kids getting awards. So then the next year, it's 7th grade. We go to the awards ceremony because it just seems like she is exceptional. She really is doing exceptional things. And she really is putting herself out there. And she actually looks at the criteria for the awards. And she knows, like, okay, I think I actually qualify for some of these. And I would say, okay, give me examples or whatever. Well, maybe, it's possible. But as I'm sitting there in the awards ceremony, I'm noticing that every person there seems to be, with their parent and getting an award. And then I'm recognizing the only people there are people who are getting awards. There's no real audience. So those people must have known beforehand that their child was getting an award. And this was the daytime. So they clearly took off work. And I'm looking and I'm thinking, I never got an email. And so I'm just thinking to myself, I don't think she's going to get an award, or else I would have known. And it's getting really uncomfortable because they're going through more awards, and I'm noticing her getting kind of disappointed, and we're listening to the criteria for the awards. And then I'm thinking, oh man, this is painful. It's not like when I was in school where you didn't know if you were getting an award and it was a surprise. This seems to be quite curated. And then I say to her, well, maybe not this year, maybe next year, and I actually say to her, I think all these people, maybe they were notified ahead of time, because I don't want to get all the way to the end and she's really disappointed. So I'm trying to prep her a little bit. And we're sitting there and watching, and then because all the kids are there, but only some of the parents, only the parents of children who are getting awards, I'm noticing. That was painful. And then that entire award ceremony goes by, and she looks at me and kind of says, yeah, probably next year. And I said, I'm sorry. I think, I think you deserve a lot of these. And I'm not sure what the situation is. I can see that, you do deserve these things, and schools are political, and I don't know what else to tell you. Clearly there's something we don't know about how this works. And so if you want an award, I think it's entirely possible for you to get one. Clearly there's a system in place for getting awards, because I think you objectively deserve these. And if you want one, I think it's totally capable. You're totally capable to get one. But it was, for sure, tears in the eyes kind of situation, and a lot of disappointment, because she is really exceptional. And then of course she identified as trans, and she managed to get the top award for the entire school for something like, courage and honesty and becoming her authentic self. You get an award for that. So I guess what I told her is there must be some sort of system to get an award, and she managed to figure out what that system is. And of course she got an award. Ta-da.
Can I interject something that I want you to bring up too? Because
Sure.
I also know Jeanette's story very well. She was bullied before, right?
Yeah.
Before she identified as transgender.
Yeah. I mean, she was her own being, kids who are their own selves, and you just watch them be kind of quirky and cool. And I'm always amazed by those kids, that I'm like, wow, if I could be an adult like that, that'd be super awesome. And I don't know what drives those kids, but it's super cool to watch. And she was like that. And then when she went to school, she was like that the whole year. And teachers noticed, they're like, man, she's so different. Like, she's so unique, and she's so cool, and this, and she was always different than all these other people. I remember going to a parent-teacher conference where the teacher said, you know, she does really well in my class. She's very respectful. She helps me with things. She's great, but she's not like the other kids here. And I said, I understand that. Well, she's having trouble kind of having a lot of relationships with them because she doesn't understand the way that they operate. And I said, you know, help me understand. Well, they kind of sometimes are deceitful. You know, they're middle schoolers. They're backstabbers. You know, they're not nice. All this stuff, and it doesn't make sense to her because she's quite honest, you know, and she's quite caring, and middle schoolers aren't like that. And I said, it seems like my daughter isn't the problem here. I'm missing what you're asking here. What are you saying? And they're like, well, she probably needs to adjust if she wants to make friends.
She should lie more.
Yeah, she should adjust. If she wants to make friends, she's going to have to adjust to become a kid who is like a traditional middle schooler.
So tell her to act up in your classroom?
I said, it seems to me that the qualities that my daughter is displaying are qualities that you want the other kids to become, and my daughter already is that. And so you want her to devolve? Like, I'm sorry, I don't know what you're saying. Well, if she wants friends and she wants to get along with the other kids and she wants to, you know, integrate into that, then she's going to have to do that. And I said, I'm not sure I want that. I think everybody else needs to step up a bit.
Yeah, so they
like
weren't
you
really
as a
fostering
teacher
that.
need to call them to step up.
Yeah.
And then like you know, Jennifer said, my daughter figured it out. You know, the kids were bullying her, they were mean to her, and then look, she figured out the system. She figured it out, and it worked. She worked within the system, and she got the rewards that exist within the system. She gets friends, she gets protection, all the things that she didn't get when she was bullied as a girl. Like there was a boy on the playground, and the playground isn't that big. There's only like 30 kids up there at one time or something. I mean, there's almost not, and it's on top of the roof actually of this school because it's in the city. And there's a kid who absolutely shouts across the playground and calls her a bitch. Everybody's got to hear this. I mean, surely everyone heard it. Did that ever happen according to anybody but my daughter? Never happened. Nobody. That boy bullying her all the time and calling her names and all that never happened. Of course it never happened because nobody's going to go against the bully. So then she realized, I don't have any protection as a girl. Of course. But guess where you get protection? You say you're trans and everything is off limits. You cannot say anything bad about that kid if they're trans because, as we well know, they will kill themselves.
Oh my God. It's so crazy. You know, gosh, yeah, thanks for sharing this story, Joyce. I mean, I hope that your daughter is able to, you know, keep her own boundaries and not be kowtowed by you know, being non-conforming. I mean, we need non-conforming kids, and it's sad when non-conforming kids are moved into this, and it's just, you know, insane to me that just insane, you know.
But you see how smart kids are, right? So kids they're not thinking big globally, right? They're thinking like we say, adolescents cannot see around corners, right? They can't see the entire block and the entire village, city, whatever. They can see just that stretch from this corner to that corner. That's what they can see. And they're problem solving that straight line, and they figure out how to do it. And so our kids are very smart. They are problem solving in all kinds of ways. But what happens is when they build that, then they're stuck on that. And they don't know that after they build this entire obstacle course to get around, then the corner turns and all of a sudden they're 15 feet up in the air and that thing is 25 feet down. And the problem solving skills that they used to get to the end of that block do not work when you turn the corner.
I had something I was
very
interject,
difficult.
but I'm so distracted by it. Jeanette has the best analogies.
I don't know. I'm a visual person, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, so the commonality here is that a lot of these kids are doing it at school, for school,
For
or
school.
they're, getting through the whole social situation at school.
Yeah.
And then it's being reinforced by the adults there, and then it gets concretized. And we have just seen, I guess, there was a study that came out, and it was by transgender doctors, saying that socially transitioned kids tend to
Persist
for 5 years. So what they do when they're actually making this happen. Yeah, Jeanette's story gets everybody.
Yeah. Oh, Marcia. Don't worry. I'll take care of you. My story is hopeful because everybody is capable of change and growth, including me and my child. So I can guarantee you that things will not stay the same forever in any situation, whether it's good or bad. The best moments of your life are also not going to last forever, and neither are the worst.
Yeah.
So you have to really suck out the marrow of all the goodness, and the bad parts, you just have to hold your breath and wait for it to pass.
Yeah. Well, and that's something I guess maybe we can get into, because I want to talk about ultimately what can we be I think this is a great segue, because what can we be teaching into the culture or instilling in our kids who are not yet captured, or even gifting to our kids who are already captured, that can help them through this? Because I feel like ultimately the skill building that they're doing in terms of external validation seeking constantly, that is not a good practice. Like if it's behavior that you're practicing, it's not a good practice for building internal resiliency,
Right.
or finding an internal authority, or having boundaries with other people. And so, what I don't know, what are you sharing, either with your families or with the parents that you're working with, to build better skill building tools?
Did you
for
just say
kids?
build back better?
Build back better. Yeah. How are we going to build back better? That's, oh my gosh. Everyone who thinks that we're a right-wing conspiracist is now we're done for.
Wait, build back better with Biden. Isn't build back better Biden?
Oh, it's Biden. Oh, good. We are okay.
You're
there we
fine.
go.
You're fine.
Okay, we're fine.
Yeah,
we're fine.
you're
Okay,
good.
we're fine. Well, I mean, we're not. I really, because ultimately, obviously, we all know this. The behaviors that we practice in terms of the ones that we make habitual or do daily, these are the skills that we grow in ourselves. So if we're teaching our kids that, like, you need constant external validation, if people don't pronoun you accurately, you might die, you might literally die. So it's like, there's where is the internal sense of resiliency, and how can we instill that?
I want to hear, Jennifer, you want to answer that?
Talking about resiliency, I mean,
I think,
or the values that you care about. That was my language. You don't have to use my language.
Yeah, I mean, I guess
like, how do you build a strong kid?
About sort of inoculating children against this. I mean, I guess this isn't going to speak to resiliency necessarily, but I guess I would talk, if I had younger kids, I would talk to them about, all the different ways you can be a girl, or all the different ways you can be a boy. And that, but you will always be a girl. But
well,
you can be any kind of girl. There's all these different options, which is what we learned, what I remember learning, free to be you and me. I think, I don't know if you are.
I know it.
You remember Free to Be You and Me?
I think I'm too young for this.
Bigger kids. Yeah. So what they're learning now is the opposite of that, is that if you don't, like, behave like the stereotype what either sex is, then you must be the opposite sex.
Well, Jennifer,
instead
maybe I guess maybe what I'm asking into, and these are also great answers, but what
Mhm.
are, because I know your part of your story is you actually successfully helped your daughter
Oh,
walk away from this, from walk
Mm.
away from what was a lot of great external validation that she was receiving from others. So maybe my question really is like, what were your steps? How did
Mm.
you communicate this to her in such a way that she was
Mm.
able to, come back into herself?
Mm.
yeah. Well, that was a long process, a long, careful process, because she had, gotten into it. And I think from my observations of my situation, and many of the thousands of parents that we also talk to, that the deeper that a kid gets into it, and also the older they are, the harder it is to pull them back out. That's
Mhm.
just the situation. I was lucky. We were lucky that our daughter was very young,
Mm.
and that we found out, relatively quickly what was happening. So I count us very lucky. However, there are certain things that I see as commonalities that help children get out of this. And one of them is to pull them out of the situation where they are being affirmed, whatever that takes. And the most of the people that I know, had to do something kind of extreme, like take them to a different school, pull them out of school, move. I mean, I'm not going to say that that's the rule, but that's just what I have observed, and from in many of the situations. So there's that. Pull them out of the influence of the affirmation.
Well, it's the input is what you're talking about. You're changing the inputs, and so you're
Yeah,
getting a different output.
yeah. And then, I slowly had conversations with her. We talked about historical situations. I talked about the doctors. I was like, that was one of the first things I talked to her about. I was like, you can't always trust doctors.
Mm.
They've made lots of mistakes in the past. And, we talked about the opioid crisis and what happened, and how a lot of those doctors really thought they were helping people. They believed it. They also had some financial incentive, and people can be, their judgment can be clouded by that.
Mm.
And so we started with, talking about that sort of stuff. We also watched, a documentary on Scientology. So we were learning about
Great.
cults.
Mm.
Great. That's smart.
We watched, we watched some movies about the Holocaust. So that, that was, I guess, I have to be careful in that comparison, but there's some historical comparisons there to what is happening now. And one of them is how they got control of children.
Yeah, for
And
sure.
they then got those children to turn against their parents.
Mhm.
And they had, they love bombed them, right? By
Mhm.
telling them,
Mhm.
you're part of this amazing thing, and you are the future, and you guys are so smart, and your parents are stupid, right? Which is kind of a lot of what I'm hearing right now about this stuff. Like, the kids, they know themselves, right? The kids know themselves, and the parents are, not enlightened, right? Like, they're old
Right.
boomers, right? Which none of us actually are. I mean, that's the grandparents. And but those sorts of things, right? It's like we're also like very ageist right now. Like, people don't value,
Mm.
age and wisdom,
Yeah.
and most wisdom comes with age and experience. It's just, that's the way it is.
Mm.
And so anyway, we had all these sorts of discussions about historical things going on, and those things started to sink in. I talked to her about, eventually, about the detransitioners, and how they, were love bombed basically when they got into it, and then they realized that it was not right for them, and then they were rejected. And she came out with it, she's like, well, that's like a cult. So
yes. Oh my God, yes. I mean, interesting. Yeah.
right. Yes. I was like, yes, it is.
Almost
yeah, I mean,
exactly.
yeah. So we had all these kinds of conversations, and then at some point I started getting a little bit more direct about, how do you feel these days? And she's like, at some point she just wasn't interested in it anymore. It really wasn't doing anything for her. So she had been really pulled out of it. Another huge factor that I do not want to miss is that we were doing stuff outside with our bodies. We were in nature. We were hanging out with extended family. We got a camper and we traveled around the country and did, traveling homeschool. And, those connections, in-person connections with multi-generational, right?
Yeah.
I think are important. I hear about people who are like taking their kids into the mountains, and I mean, that's
building a cabin and becoming the Unabomber.
It's an activity. It's fine.
That's engineering right there.
Yeah. I think I talked about. I might not have talked about Russia, but somebody talked about the communists. I did talk about China and how similar things were happening there too. Yeah. There's a lot of historical comparisons.
There's too many actually
happening right now.
Yeah.
So I wanted to relate. I mean, Jennifer said so many great things. One is about wisdom, but I want to back up even from that. My dad said something interesting. He also testified in Ohio, and so you can listen to his testimony on the website, the Ohio channel, in that committee on the 26th. So my dad said something afterward to me on the phone. He said, after listening to Corinna from the Gender Consumer Advocacy Network or something like that.
No, Hetero Dorks podcast. Anyway,
so Corinna said with some things, and my dad said, you know what? If they're going to show videos of stuff, or they're going to tell kids about the wonderful things about transition in schools, why don't they show stuff that like Corinna talks about? Why don't they have to watch a video about the dangers of this? I'm missing it. Like, why don't they have to watch that too? And I thought, Dad, you're a 76-year-old genius.
Yeah, good point.
Yeah, it was a great point.
Did you guys have to watch that film in high school when you took driver's ed that was like
the
basically
drunk driver, scary?
It was like a
stuff?
horror film. Yeah, it was like I don't know. It had a name that was everyone knew, but it was like this basically almost practically a horror show about drunk driving accidents and kids who got in them. I mean, you were taking driver's ed. You wanted your driver's license, and then you were like, "What?"
Horrifying.
Yeah.
And then some of those things are great. So I want to touch on a couple of things. One is I want to encourage everybody who's watching this. So I admin a group called Concerned Parents of Transgender, Non-Binary Kids, Teens, and Young Adults. The group is for parents, and Partners for Ethical Care serves more than parents. We do serve a lot of parents, and we help to connect them with resources, which is what we do. We do awareness, and we connect people to resources that can actually help them. But what we do on front end is awareness.
We also are trying to help with legislative efforts.
And that's partly like the second part of the mission, which is we're raising awareness to legislators in order to, support efforts, which would be legislation. Right. Those are efforts to stop what's happening. So we have this group called Concerned Parents. There are other groups for parents on Facebook, a lot actually. We have a group that is dialogue focused, so you can come in with whatever kinds of, we're not affirming, we're not affirming. We're a place for dialogue, thinking, questions, curiosity. It's not a support group, actually. We're not there for support. We are compassionate, we are curious, and there's a lot of people, and it's a great group for discussion. We get all kinds of people applying to the group. Somebody just applied. They have a quite young child. They said, I'm here to get support on how to listen to my child on how they feel. Support is being there for your child on any decision they make, no matter what it is. So that's what they consider the definition of support is. So interesting, because one of the moderators of the group said, hold on, I don't know about that. Like, would I support my kid if they wanted to be a burglar?
Yeah,
Like,
they're like, I'm really good at picking
like
locks. So
yeah,
Yeah.
I think I want to go into that, because there's a bunch of rich people who are, you know, taking over everything, and poor people deserve more. And so I'm going to start breaking into people's homes and taking this stuff because they don't deserve it. They got it by it's ill-gotten gains. You know, I'm going to even all this stuff out. This is the way I'm going to do it. My response, of course, was the only thing that I would support would be them actually becoming the Hamburglar. That's reasonable, of course, because we have to keep it light. And I'm
Love
just
the
here.
Hamburglar.
You see that positive reinforcement where I made a bad joke and you all laugh, and it makes it more likely that I make more bad jokes. That wasn't the point of that. The point was, if you want to know what's actually happening, Libs of TikTok, of course, is one realm, but the other realm, like I said in my own testimony in Ohio, join affirming parent groups. Join them, see what is actually happening. You can see very clearly what they're doing to their own children and how that system functions. You can join. I have been in them. They don't check a lot of things. They don't do a lot of vetting, to be honest, because they think they're on the right side of history. So you can go in those groups. They have tens of thousands of people in there celebrating all the things that they're doing and all of what I would describe as the disconnecting they're creating for children. So I think the last thing that I really want to go to exactly what Jennifer was saying around wisdom. So my dad testified, and I think he gave a great testimony about all the fads that he's seen come and go. And since my dad was born during the time of Genesis, he really went through a lot. So my dad talked about lots of things, and he said this is a fad. You can clearly, you know, it rose up so quickly. It's clearly a fad. And I'm even recalling, and I'm going to have to put this online because after I dig it out of a box, because it's going to be amazing. I was on the front page of my local newspaper during the grunge period. Yes, I was.
You're so cool.
I know. I was so cool. I was so cool at the time. Luckily, I don't have any of those clothes, sunglasses, or jewelry anymore. I abandoned that and moved on with my life. And nobody knows that until I said it right now on this show. Nobody remembers that. And I moved on. Unfortunately, we can't really do that with when people change their voices and their bodies and they have a name that follows them from middle school. I mean, that's some of the concerns that I have around my own trans-identified daughter, who only has ever wanted some sort of social transition. And by social transition, I'm not even talking about clothing. I'm simply talking about name and pronouns. So she is operating under a different name and has been for 3 years. I don't know how you get out of that. Some people, a lot of people, only know her as this made up name. I don't know how you get out of that. It's not something that you can abandon, because you go to the grocery store 5 years later and they say, hey, and they say this name, and that's not your name anymore, maybe. And that's complicated. It's not like clothing that you can abandon. So that's really hard.
I have a point to make that's relevant to what you just said.
Yeah.
That some of the parents that I know whose kids are desisting actually want to move and go to another school because of what you just said, because they have gotten into a position, which the adults helped them do, that they now can't get themselves out of. It's very difficult.
I don't know how you get out of it.
Yeah.
I honestly don't know how you would get. I'm having trouble getting out of my married last name. I mean, you know how complicated that is when you own, like, let's say a car, or you rent this, or it's kind of all over the place. I'll probably be getting mail with my married last name, and I've been divorced for 7 years. I'll probably be getting that mail until I die.
Yeah. And to take that a step further, I've also heard some of the detransitioners talk about friends of theirs who quote unquote transition, that did medical things to themselves and that have regret, but are like, well, I can't really change this now. Like, this is who I am. So I guess I might as well just go with it.
Yeah, the concept of detransition, I was talking to Chloe Cole about that. The concept of detransition is a bit of a false idea, because you can't move backwards in time. You're always moving forward. And it was partly, you know, why I asked how she wanted to be described in a post from Partners for Ethical Care. And she said, I describe myself not as a detransitioner, but as a former trans child. Because you just can't, you're not detransitioning. You have to move forward.
Yeah, that's true.
And so it becomes a part of her past, as if like former, you know, member of the, you know, Goonies or whatever. It becomes something in your past that you can then move forward. But it indicates like, oh, that's why you know me, is because I was in, you know, Home Alone or whatever. And that's who I am. And that was me as a child actor or whatever. I want to say something that I think we've talked about here and there. And Amy and I talked about this just briefly on a phone call yesterday. So when I was giving testimony in Ohio, there was a representative who asked me, don't you just think that we just need more mental health care? This is what I think you're saying. We just need more mental health care. We just need more mental health care. We just need more we need a first opinion, a second opinion, a third opinion. We need more professionals helping people. And my answer was absolutely not. So the reason that I say that is we have this idea in our minds, if that you get a certificate, a license, a piece of paper that you hang on your wall, that you're somehow qualified to do something, that's false. And to be honest, if I go back,
on what it is. It depends.
It depends. But let's say we go back in time to figure out, how did we get therapists? How did this profession evolve? Where did it come from? It came from this idea that you would go, for example, to your neighbor. You know, Mrs. Dean is on one of my blocks. Mrs. Dean has lived on that block since 1965. She's probably as old as my father. And you can go and talk to her, and she's going to give you some wisdom, some perspective. You know, you tell her about this relationship, you tell her about this, whatever's going on with the neighbor and this, that, and the other. She's lived enough years that she's got some experience, and she's the go-to woman. So you got some problems, they go, I don't know what to tell you. You should go talk to Mrs. Dean. Like, she's going to tell you something. I don't know what she's going to say, but she's got some good advice. And so you go to Mrs. Dean. Then all of a sudden you're spending like 4 or 5 hours every few days at Mrs. Dean's house. You're starting to feel a little bad because you're going into her meal times, and then you start bringing her some banana bread and, you know, hey, Mrs. Dean, I brought some like corn and beans and stuff like that. And, you know, like, oh, I got some leftover barbecue. And then all of a sudden you're like, oh, I'm taking up a lot of this woman's time. And you're giving her things, obviously, to reimburse her for her time that she's spending with you. And you're appreciative of that. And then everybody starts to know Mrs. Dean as that person. And so her life is kind of subsidized in some way by people who are taking her time. And that's the exchange of value, right? I value your time. I value the things that you're doing. And so I'm going to give you something of value for that, because you gave me something of value. I'm giving you something of value. This is one of the major reasons why artists should be paid, for example, right? Right? Mrs. Dean is giving advice out of her own good nature, but she also has to eat, right? Yeah. And she deserves real things in her life. So Mrs. Dean would be a great person to then become a therapist, of course. Now, Mrs. Dean is unlikely to become a therapist because she's a Black 72-year-old woman, and she would have to pay thousands of dollars to do that and write hundreds of pages. Is Mrs. Dean going to become a licensed therapist? No. and she will never be able to treat people. But she has more value than the 22-year-old coming out of the vast majority of universities, certainly.
Yes.
Yeah.
And we know that the people who have these licenses, certificates, and all these things, they are white people.
Yeah.
Very likely to be white people, because they have learned, as I said about my daughter, the systems to achieve some sort of goal, some sort of level, some sort of award, some sort of thing on a piece of paper.
Yeah.
And we're devaluing the people who have these natural talents. So those people, that idea that we gain therapists through a natural process of living with people, then we have people who say, I want to be a therapist, so I'm going to go, and then I'm going to check off all the boxes, and ta-da, I'm a therapist. And we have too many of those people saying that they have some sort of wisdom at 23 years old. You do not.
Yeah.
You don't at all.
Well, and we're really highly pathologized right now too. And kids are online and they're looking for all the different diagnoses, and they want a therapist. You know, I remember somebody recently saying, isn't it so great that these young kids were talking about having a therapist? And I was thinking, actually, I'm very concerned about that. I think there's too many kids with therapists, and I actually don't think that kids especially should be going to therapy with a therapist by themselves.
We were just talking about that. I mean, we were just talking about that because children always exist within a social structure. They cannot and do not exist as a separate individual, both financially and socially, emotionally, any of those things. They cannot exist outside of some sort of unit of social structure, whether it's a family or something like that. So they have to be integrated. And that's why I think Jennifer and I were saying it should be family dynamics therapy, family systems therapy, something like that works on those systems.
Well, you know, the school, since Joyce happens to be in the chat, the graduate program that we went to, where we did our doctoral work, that kind of therapy, it's called depth psychology, but one of the great thinkers on it, James Hillman, has a great book that's asking the question, there's been over 100 years of psychotherapy and things have gotten worse. And he makes the point that you are just intuitively getting, Jeanette, which is that this is a for-profit system. So what do therapists require? They require clients. So the entire industry model, the model of mental health as an industry requires patients. It requires that people have these needs, and it also has not. If I was talking about resiliency before, it has not built a resiliency into the population. So a lot of what ultimately depth psychology does is it's very much a psychological cultural critique, and it's observing the fact that a lot of these psychological symptoms that we see are really accurate responses to the environment. You know, so if we look at both of your daughters and their symptoms are not they are not symptomatic of an internal issue. There is nothing wrong with your children. It's not that there's something in their mind that's broken or in their bodies that's broken. They are having a symptom response to the external culture, and ultimately it is culture that needs to be critiqued. It is culture that needs to be fixed. It is culture that needs the examination. It's not that your kids need to adjust themselves so that they can better fit into the broken culture. You know, if kids are non-conforming and they feel confined and trapped by, you know, objectifying sexist stereotypes that are projected onto their bodies, you know, that if you are having uncomfortability with sexist, objectifying, pornified projections,
you're a normal human being.
That's regular. It's normal. It's like the fever. It's like the fever in response to the virus.
Right.
The virus is the problem. Your fever is your body actually trying to heal you.
But I would say that talking about my own daughter who grew up in my kind of super feminist household, well, I said, this system is awful, you know, and she knew that. I remember maybe she said one time, or at least alluded to this, basically, Mom, I really don't want to fight a massive system of patriarchy. Like, I just want to live my life.
Aw, bless.
And it's true. I mean, if you're 10 years old and your mom is like, there's this big blah, blah, that's great, Mom, but like, I got to go to middle school.
There are some
You
good
know?
therapists now. Sorry.
And it's like, yeah, there are some good therapists.
There are.
But,
I believe in good therapy. I
yeah,
don't
but
think it's all
It's
bad.
okay. We didn't have to.
Yeah.
I just wanted to put our comment up there. It's
Yeah,
true.
yeah.
but
go on.
but I think to say that kids are somehow responsible for changing the culture is false. I think that adults are responsible for that. And I think that that's in the thread that we've run through this, which is adults are responsible, and we have to protect children. I think those two things working in tandem is good. Now, it's funny that the person said there are some good therapists. I'm not denying that. What I'm saying is a good therapist would help you build the supportive people in your life that aren't paid.
Well,
if a therapist is somehow training you to come back to them all the time to get water from the well, that is a bad therapist.
Yeah,
so
they should be training you out of therapy.
And
they
the
should
other
train you out of
thing-
therapy. And you should be utilizing the people in your own network or building those connections with people who can help you. That's what we try to do with parents is we say, okay, there's some dynamic in your family, like Jennifer talked about, I've talked about, there's some dynamic in your family that has to shift. So let's examine that within your family structure. And maybe a therapist can help you examine that and say, okay, you got to build this connection for the child and this connection for the child and this connection for the child. So the child's like supported, like on a trampoline. When you have the bounces, you don't fall through to the ground. You have enough kind of springs attached. So when those bounces happen, they can move along, right?
Yeah.
But you have to have all of those springs attached. You can't just say, every time I bounce, this person's going to catch me. Well, because that person's only catching you for $150 an hour and you stop paying them, they stop talking to you.
You are, this is 100% correct, Jeanette. And you know, I want to add two things and then let you two go off again. Which is,
you mean go off again, like take over the entire thing like we did before?
That's why I brought you here. I brought you here so I could listen. But one, I want to say that you know, parents are the best authority on their children. So I want to really hone in on that. And Jennifer, I've heard you say that before, because I think that ultimately, hopefully what a good therapist is doing is helping you be more you, and only, I mean, the child is ultimately a kind of an authority on themselves. They have a certain familiarity with themselves, but ultimately the parent should be brought into this process, as you say, because the parents are the best authority on their own children. So to have these kids sitting alone with a therapist who is ultimately another adult in the room who they want to please, and they can see by their reactions that they are wanting to be pleased, you know, I think that is really important. And then Jennifer, the other thing that I want to get into and let you guys go off on it is we have spoken about the importance of ultimately embodiment work, you know, and that is, you know, the kind of work that I think is important in a therapeutic model. That's the work that I, you know, do with clients, because this is internal authority building. So the somatic work that keeps you connected to your body, and it's not just a meditating process where you're thinking about everything, but you're really getting into your body and your body's connection to the emotions. You know, I think that is another aspect that is really, it's not the normal part of, like, you know, behavioral therapy that's currently most practiced. I mean, some people do practice embodied models of therapy, but I think this is another one where we let these kids spin out of control in these ideations without getting into their bodies.
Yeah, I want to highlight and then toss to Jennifer this potato that she said something in an interview recently with some kind of therapist. Actually, some kind of therapist. What's
You
her
must
name?
be some kind of therapist.
You must be some kind of therapist. So she was talking about, and Jennifer said it so easily, yes, we validate feelings. Feelings are real. You have this feeling, and it kind of, and I know lots of people can sense this feeling. I know I can sense, I go, I'm starting to get angry. I'm starting to get very frustrated. This feeling is rising. So where is that coming from? Is that coming from something from my childhood? Is that where is that coming from? Because objectively, I'm looking at the situation and I don't see that anger would really be necessitated here. So I'm getting this feeling, and then I have to, when it comes, I say, okay, the feeling is real, but the meaning that I assign to that feeling is open.
Yeah.
Right.
That's the
And we
difference.
have the feeling first. We have the feelings,
The feeling
and
is
then we
first.
try to interpret them.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. Can you talk about
and
that,
we can
Jennifer?
often get that wrong. Yeah. Especially if you think about these kids who are really dissociated from their bodies, that are sitting on computers, that aren't actually getting out and moving and being in person with people. It's really easy to become dissociated from your body. And I mean, the dangers of the internet and the computer are more than I ever really had considered, beyond all the like predatory people that are on there, but which is also another, if anybody wants to know about the predatory practices, go to Gender Mapper. Is it gendermapper.org?
Yep.
.org?
Yeah.
Either .org or
Keep,
.com.
you
I
keep
can't
talking.
even-
I'll confirm that.
Okay. Yeah. Anyway, she documents all that stuff very well, the predatory practices that are happening, which are pretty bad.
Yep. .org.
Yeah.
I think
but
what you're
yeah,
saying,
so
just to interject for 1 second, what you're talking about with the danger of the internet and social media, I don't want it to be like, oh my God, the internet's killing our kids. But what really happens in that scenario is we used to have feelings come up, and then we would have them be here, and then they would be there for a minute. And like all strong feelings, they would kind of dissipate after a while. And then I would say to myself, I was really pissed off. I wonder why that was. Versus now where I say, I'm kind of getting angry. And then I text my friend and go, God, I'm really fucking pissed off right now. This is just total bullshit. My mom just told me to clean my room. Your mom's a bitch. She's terrible. It's because, I mean, you're doing a right now interpretation that gives you no distance between the thing that happened and the feeling. It gives you no space to make that interpretation outside of the here now moment that your brain has all these chemicals and all these feelings. And so that's the danger, really, I think, of the social media, internet, electronics everywhere thing, is the interpretation is happening right now versus where it used to happen, where you would take a walk in the woods.
right. And you process things when you walk.
Yeah. You would actually physically move about, and the chemicals would kind of dissipate in your brain. You would create new chemicals in your body, and things would move and change about in your own physical structure. And we don't have that.
Yeah. Yeah. I have, I've said this before, in my work, that this is one of the stories that I usually, I do some retreats, you ladies know, with women, and I share this story because it was transformational for me, but I think it goes to what you're speaking to. And I think ultimately it's like practices to build resiliency. And I remember in my own work, there was a moment where I had trauma. I felt terrible. I was feeling, just traumatized, depressed, and having very, very dark thoughts. And I just was like, I had this like crying out moment, with myself, where I was like, I just want to feel better. I just want to feel better. I just want to feel better. And what I realized that I meant is I just want these bad feelings to go away. And when I was crying out to feel better, I thought I just don't want to feel these bad feelings anymore. But I don't know what happened for me in that moment. I knew that I was, obviously I've had training, so I was allowing the feelings to come up. And what I realized that I was actually crying out for was to be able to feel my feelings, to not
Yes.
be dissociated from my feelings, and to be able to feel them, to be better, to my crying out to feel better was actually a crying out to be better at feeling my feelings, because I realized I'm going to meet these feelings again. I'm going to meet shame again. I'm going to meet pain again. I'm going to meet depression again. I'm going to meet all of these things again and again. Life is a cycle. There will be, deaths. There will be, breakups. There will be, I will meet these things again. And what I actually want is to be able to handle feeling them. And so my original wish, which was like, I just want to feel better and I don't want to feel these bad things, ultimately became this understanding that I want to have the resiliency to be actually a person who can feel my feelings, so that I can gain the information that's there. Because I think, just like our hand, when it touches a hot pan, it's a signal to have a response. But I think our emotions are also just informational, but we don't always understand, like you were saying, we don't understand what the accurate response is.
So, and what we're teaching kids right now, I think we have been teaching them for a while as a society in our culture, is that those feelings are bad, and we don't want you to have to feel those bad feelings.
Yeah, we don't want you to have bad feelings. Yeah.
And actually, the only way to get to the other side of those feelings is to feel them. And so, being angry or being sad or being ashamed or any of those things, we need to be teaching kids it's okay to feel that way, actually. And
it's so interesting. Jennifer's going to congratulate me on this fantastic analogy. So if I'm just preempting it right now. So I grew up in of course. Yeah.
Because I want, before I forget this thing, because it's so perfect what you were talking about with the feelings, because kids are uncomfortable, right? Especially in puberty. And so they're just trying to get out of this discomfort, instead of us teaching them that this discomfort is normal. It will pass. You'll learn how to deal with it. We're teaching them, okay, we're gonna help you get out of this discomfort. And you're right. You are, we'll make you appear to be the opposite sex and escape yourself.
Yeah, you can avoid it. So if it's just like avoiding some sort of food that you don't want to eat, or let's say a medicine that you actually need to take, that's going to help you. Like those people who take shots to build immunity toward allergy kind of stuff. You have to keep taking them and then it builds up. So the analogy that I was going to make is I grew up in a really small town where you had all different kinds of people, but it was really small. So if somebody knocks on your door, you kind of have to let them in. I mean, there's no like, oh, I'm so busy. Like nobody's busy because it's a small town. And so you have the person come in, they sit down, you talk to them for however long they really want to, until you're like, oh gosh, I got to go to the grocery store before it closes, or something like that. But the people are all kinds of people. And those are just the people who are not really moving away from you. They're in your town, and you're going to have to deal with them in some way, whether you like them or you don't like them. And they're going to stop by your house, and they're going to sit down for sometimes 15 minutes and sometimes just to get a cup of sugar. And sometimes they're going to need to be there all day long at something. And you have to invite them, because you're inviting everybody. You can't leave anybody out. It's a very small town. So you have those moments, and you can get through like sitting in the living room with obnoxious Bob for a little bit, and you learn some better strategies for dealing with obnoxious Bob. And then you realize, oh, obnoxious Bob actually really likes gardening. So I can kill two birds with one stone. I can do some gardening, talk to Bob, help him out. Obnoxious Bob leaves after a while. It's not so bad. I figured out some ways to deal with him. And then you learn a little bit about obnoxious Bob, that he has some things that you both enjoy together. And so we don't want to throw out all of obnoxious Bob and lock the door and pretend like we're not home when he stops by, because there are some valuable things that we learn. So if all of those kind of people in this small town are these emotions, of course, like Happy Sally is awesome to hang out with. She's amazing. Like, it's awesome to be around her, but she does kind of make awesome Bob seem worse when he's actually not so terrible. Like, yeah, of course, I'd want to hang out with Happy Sally all the time, but it does make the bad things kind of worse. Yeah. It's best to have a variety of people in the town. It makes you more prepared for the variety of people that you're going to experience in the world. So what we're teaching children is lock the door for those obnoxious neighbors. Don't let them in. They have no value. Those feelings have no value. You will get nothing good of them. You will not grow in any way. They serve no purpose at all. And so you only want the happy stuff. And that works for a little bit, just like heroin. I mean, you're basically avoiding. I mean, you are doing the chemical, the biological chemical equivalent of drugs. Of course you are. Of course you are. You're basically avoiding. Constantly.
It's a maladaptive coping strategy.
That is not helping children. Like, you're really setting them up for a very, very difficult adulthood. They're going to be completely unprepared, and they're going to fail. They're going to fail, and it's going to be really sad to witness, to be honest. They're going to have a really tough time of it. And I don't know how you go back in time to the time that your brain should have been developing these skills, and then you try to do that in adulthood. I mean, my master's degree was in adult education, so I know a lot about how the adult brain works. It's not going to work like it did at 14.
No. And especially if these kids have been on the puberty blockers, which we know causes some cognitive impairment. So
among other things,
I mean, the psychological, even when you add in like puberty blockers and cross-sex hormones, when you add in the psychological impact of social transition, you're doing damage to the brain.
Social transition is not harmless. It is a powerful psychotherapeutic treatment. Just been said by Stella O'Malley talks about that, and so do apparently some of the gender doctors. I mean, they're basically saying that it's the kids who are affirmed continue for 5 years at least. They know that.
Well, and I worry about the actual kids who go down the path of any kind of transition, social or medical transition. They are obviously being harmed, but I think, of course, all kids who are in the presence of this ideology are being harmed. Like, I think of that kid, with your daughter, Jennifer, who was forced to apologize to her for using the wrong pronouns. I mean, what's that doing to him?
Using the correct pronouns. He was forced to apologize for using the correct pronouns.
The correct ones. Yeah.
They're training all the children, right? To not trust their own natural instincts. Not they're undermining all the, like, we know that we all recognize male and female instantly. And they're countering that in children, which is dangerous, actually.
Super dangerous.
And potentially harmful.
I always go back to the point that, like, developmentally, like, 2-year-olds have that phase of the terrible twos, because it's the very beginning phase of gaining some authority over your world. So they're pushing boundaries because they're attempting to gain just a little bit of authority.
I love that. That's my favorite age. 18 months, 2 years.
They're so funny.
Love it.
But one of the things that developmentally 2-year-olds also do is point and say, I point at the thing, I say the thing. And that's why, a lot of times you're going to go around with a 2-year-old. I don't have my own children, but I nannied a lot and I worked with kids a lot, and they're going to say like bird. And you're going to be like, that's right, that's a bird. And they're going to be like baby. And you're like, that's right, that's a baby, even younger than
Right.
you. And like, they're going to do that point and say, because they are using their senses to see if they are right, and they are looking for the affirmation, but the affirmation is just affirming that they are naming reality accurately. And it's a point, it's a step, it's a developmental step of claiming authority over the world around you. I can trust what my senses tell me, and I can accurately name the environment. So it's this internal authority building process that we keep doing. We keep mastering it at greater and greater and greater and greater levels. But it terrifies me, because we are right now in this world where we're just like trying to reprogram and undermine that natural authority building process for kids.
Yeah.
Where they do not have the authority to name what their body is sensing in front of them.
Yeah.
All right, ladies.
Judy C loves the 2 and 3-year-olds too, and I love kids.
They're so good.
They're amazing. So
I love that the language acquisition part of their life.
Where they're naming everything.
Yeah. I just like it when they want to control something, and I'm like, yeah, totally. How can we do that? Like, I just want to give them the widest boundaries possible that are safe. Like, that's all I want. I remember somebody came over to my daughter, and she was at my house, and I went to an appointment or something, and then I come back, and I think my daughter's pretty young, like 4, maybe, something like that. And the person said, hey, so we were doing something, and she wanted to use scissors, and I told her I'm not sure if your mom wants you to use scissors. And she said, no, it's totally fine, but I didn't let her do it because I wasn't sure. And I said, no, she can do that. That's totally fine. She's like, the big ones? I was like, yeah, because I taught her how to do that, right? I taught her how to do it so that she could do it. Like, that's a boundary. That's a boundary that she can do as long as I give her the skill.
Yeah.
And of course she can do that.
Yeah.
But you prepare kids for that, possibility of utilizing that.
Yeah. I also love that no phase.
The no phase,
Well, and I think one of the things we maybe didn't touch on that since Judy is talking about the no phase, and Gavin DeBecker talks about this in The Gift of Fear, is one of the things that I worry is not happening is teaching kids how to say no to adults.
It's so funny because the whole concept of consent, which was super popular 4 or 5 years ago, we all talked about, you shouldn't have to say no, you should have to say yes. That clearly was erased from history. That phase of our lives never happened, where we were taught that, no, you shouldn't put somebody in a position where they have to say no, no, no. You should put them in a position where they're affirmatively saying yes, yes, yes. And instead, we have somebody like Jennifer's daughter who's put in this position where she has to say no.
Yeah.
And it's uncomfortable.
Yeah. I want actually to get, okay, this might be diverging from what you were just trying to bring up, the no thing. But I guess what I wanted to bring up that I didn't before was so we watched the Libs of TikTok videos, and those are very extreme ideological teachers. There's a lot of them. So it's terrifying. But my daughter's teacher wasn't one of those. He really, okay, they all think they're doing something, helpful. They all mean well, I think. But he wasn't that rabid. And I guess I just want to point out that I think most teachers are not, and that they are really doing what they have been directed to do. And so I think that we've got like 3 different categories of teachers right now. We've got the ones who are young and very ideological and indoctrinated. And then we have those that are getting the direction, and they believe it. They think that, okay, that the experts are telling me this is what I'm supposed to do, so this is what I'm supposed to do. They still should think about this a little bit. But then there's the teachers that typically I think are older, but some of them are young too, that are getting it, that are realize this is really wrong, and they're super uncomfortable with it. Some of them are actually quitting because they can't deal with it, which is frightening, because then we have the reasonable people who aren't going to be teachers anymore, and the indoctrinated ones who are coming in and taking over. But the ones that realize this is wrong are mostly afraid, because they are worried about rightfully worried about losing their positions, losing their jobs. And, there were the 2 teachers in Oregon who actually did get let go when they pushed back against this. They sued and they got their positions back. Do you remember the name of their organization?
Yes, it's so embarrassing. Yeah.
I know, they're so good. Maybe can we give it, is there like a show notes thing we can add afterwards?
Well, we can add it in the show notes. Yeah, we can add it in the show notes afterwards.
Yeah, because they're amazing. They fought the system, and they got their positions back, and they're still working, and they have their organization. But so I guess I want to point them out, because I want teachers to know that they can fight back against this, or that okay, there's a couple things. If they don't fight back, then it won't change. And I really kind of see the whole education system going down the tubes. I don't know. I don't know what's going to save it at this point. But except for if people push back, all of us really. And then the other thing is, if you're a teacher and you are part of this social transition at school, it's happening, that you're uncomfortable with it, and that it might it actually often leads to medicalization that is harmful.
Yeah.
I don't know how you could be part of that.
Yeah.
I don't think it's all the teacher's responsibility. I know it's not coming from them. It's coming from the states. It's coming from the unions. It's coming from the National Education Association, and it's coming down to all the different state unions, and then coming to all of our districts.
Well, I mean, our federal government has said that, you may not get federal funding if you don't go along with it. I mean, right now there is, oh God, where did I put this up? But basically, they're now Biden is going to come down, that he's going to try to enforce this stuff even more than it is already being enforced. And he is going to tell the schools that are not going along with, basically all mixed sex bathrooms. So schools that don't go along with the mixed sex bathroom policy are going to lose their funding for school breakfast and lunch programs. So basically, either girls have no boundaries around their bodies, or kids who can't afford it don't get to eat. So he's
right. I mean, you're not even talking about curricular funding around Title 1 or something like that. You're talking about actual food.
He is going to force schools.
They have to go to the sermon in the church before they get the free dinner. What kind of church is that?
Because right now, like in schools, I know Chicago School District did this, where they have these bathrooms, and they are boy plus and girl plus.
Is that a boy wearing a Packer?
It means, so it means that you get, basically all kids get to choose.
You can just choose.
Yeah. So basically, it just ultimately means all of the bathrooms are mixed sex bathrooms. There are no more single sex bathrroms. So
why did we get single sex bathrooms in the first place?
There was no reason, Jennifer. It was there was no safety reason.
It was just random, right? Why
totally
did we?
Random. There was no thought about safety, size of human beings, and the differential between the actual biological body. It had nothing to do with that. It was just, it had nothing.
Yeah. And for viewers who don't know, I mean, Jennifer's making a joke, but this goes back to, there was literally what they called a urinary leash, because there were 0 public toilets for women That was one of the things that the suffragettes had to fight for and win, were public bathrooms for the
Hey, but
female sex.
now, Amy, we can have any
Females
bathroom
only.
we want. So
Yeah, now we can
didn't
go
we
anywhere we
gain?
want.
No, we didn't. I want to answer Judy C's question. Are Catholic schools pushing the gender identity Barbie G.I. Joe scale and gender breed man curriculum? Genderbread man curriculum. So the Catholic schools, there's a program called, the project called the Person and Identity Project, that is run by the, it's the Catholic Women's Forum, and there are some really great women running that, actually. And there's an entire curriculum made for Catholic schools. And we have a colleague, a friend of ours, Donna Lambert, who does a lot of interfacing between the Person and Identity Project and what they're doing around that. So the Catholic schools are kind of mixed, to be honest. They should be following something around embodiment, obviously, because that's around Catholic doctrine. Are they? No. I mean, I think that too many Catholic schools, to be honest, have had a bit of a mission drift in order to keep enrollment at a status that they can maintain their schools. I know in Chicago, we've lost tons of Catholic schools. They've kind of shifted to go to other schools. And so in order to maintain Catholic school enrollment, they had a bit of a little bit of a graying of the values in Catholic schools. I would suggest that Catholic schools kind of reaffirm their own values, and then people would come toward them. Not so much, expand the boundaries so that they have more people, and just allow kind of an near very close to anything goes. I think that if you state where you stand, the right people come toward you, and I would hope that the Catholic schools start doing that. But I would follow the Person and Identity Project and see the work that we're doing. I think in our parent group, we have a system for when a parent says, my child goes to a Catholic school, and they're affirming my child. We have a system in which we say, what school does your child go to? Who runs that school? And then we will run that name all the way through the chain until it kind of goes around. It's very helpful for the parent, so that there's pushing coming toward that school. Why are you doing this? And what gives you the authority to do this? Because it is against Catholic doctrine.
Yeah.
I did give that iresolvemovement.com. That's the one that we were looking for those Oregon teachers.
The teachers who fought back and got reinstated.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah. They're in Grants Pass, Oregon. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Brave teachers. Brave.
Well,
I know we've been on here for about 16 hours.
I was gonna say,
Awesome.
I just, I love you ladies both so much, and I don't think I said this in the beginning. I've been so honored to work with you both and partner with you. And
are you ending our relationship now, or
and it's over? And I wanted to bring you into
so
a live program, because I thought it would be more hilarious to see your reactions, live.
The next time we do this, by the way, I challenge you, Amy Sousa, to do a 24-hour charity thing where you just bring on guests for 24 hours. And I would like to be somewhere around hour 16 when you really start to lose it.
Okay, good. When it's like really getting loopy.
Yes.
I think that's a great idea. Maybe we'll do that one day.
I think you could pull it off.
So crazy.
We kind of do that when, what we should do is just like film it when we're doing some of our I don't know why we plan some of our activist events where it's like, now you're in this city. Now just do an event, wait until 3 a.m., fly to the next city.
Yeah.
You're fine. You won't need sleep.
Be totally fine. We can just run it like a hamster on a wheel.
Fine. It's just fine.
Yeah, we did already do this, didn't we? We actually did it for real.
Yeah, we did that. Yeah.
And we did get a little punchy.
That's real.
Well, gosh, I just, we've had this conversation before. We're going to keep having this conversation because it's the one that we are all passionate about. were there any last thoughts? Is there anything else that either of you wanted to add that, maybe I didn't ask you, that you didn't get to say, that we forgot about, or parting words? Just give us your wisdom. Wrap it up.
I have my general parting word that I like to
good.
give to
Good.
parents.
Okay,
That
good.
that we need to. We have culturally been learning to outsource our parental authority and really just everything to the experts, and we really we know a lot more than we think we do, generally
Yep.
speaking. And to trust yourself as a parent, to trust your gut. If you feel like something's wrong, then it probably is. And to follow that, and to realize that you do know how to raise your children. You don't need to have all the parenting books. You don't need to, talk to all the experts. Generally, we all know how to do this, and trust yourself.
Yeah. Thanks.
I think
Yeah.
alongside that is interesting because I get some, because I'm a public member and Alex is a public member, we get of PEC. I mean, Jennifer is too. But we get a lot of feedback that says, oh my gosh, thank you so much for doing that. And what I kind of think is, you can do it too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, there's nothing special necessarily. We're all human
We're just
beings.
moms, right?
Yeah, and we're all capable of doing that, and every voice matters.
Mm-hmm.
Every voice matters, every single one. And so anything that you do is more than zero. So do something. You don't have to be every piece of the puzzle. You're responsible for your piece. So please put your piece in the puzzle. Your piece is critical because the entire puzzle is not finished. You may not know, but you may have that central piece that makes it all come together. But if you don't participate by putting your piece in, then it will never be finished. You must. It's kind of your duty. So we need all of those voices and all of those people.
That was such a
really good analogy.
Great analogy, yes.
Yeah. Well, thank you, everyone who has been with us for this long and interesting talk and all of its twists and turns. You have it right here. You have an invitation. You have just been invited. You've been cordially invited by Jeannette. You've now heard the invitation. So now you are invited to respond and add your voice and add your participation. Some of the ways that you can do that is you can donate and give to Partners for Ethical Care. Their website is in the show notes below. You can also like this video as you're watching it, if you're watching it on YouTube, and subscribe and hit the bell so you find out about future videos. And you can also support my work. I think there's a little PayPal or Buy Me a Coffee app. You can do that as well. But we appreciate your time, and I appreciate you both so much.
Oh, thank you, Amy. We appreciate you spending the time.
All right.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you all. Have a good day.
All right.
Yeah. Bye-bye.